Alice and Rob. It seems to me that the simplest and least costly that each one of us could do would be to have packaging toilets, which uses no drinking water, so that would be not a problem for water conservation. And then the packaging is dry, and it can be collected municipally if we set that up. And it's the least expensive because those toilets are the least expensive. There's no plumbing involved in them at all, nothing fancy. The community can all do it and save a great deal of water and money and taxes. And it just seems to me the most simple thing that the whole community could do to save drinking water for the future.
I think the quick answer is yes, it could be, but this is the point of doing a systems analysis, that if I was to survey everyone in this community and ask them today, would they be willing, most who have probably never heard of a packaged toilet to start with, would say, well, I don't think I'd like to.
Don't ask them today, ask them to find out
yes.
what it's about.
But if you're asking,
much less.
the quick answer is yes, the cost is, but when we do a systems analysis, we need to take on board the socio side of things as well, and the other factors, and then where are these packaged plants coming from, how much embedded energy is involved with them. So we need to look at the whole picture. I'm not saying no to your answer, I'm saying yes, I agree with you. That is a solution. It's not the only solution, but that is certainly a very cost-effective solution. Sociologically, today it's less likely to be accepted, but as you say, if we get demonstrations and people see how easy these are to use, and clearly there's this issue of scale. We have more people involved with this. We could then start looking fundamentally at changing the water infrastructure, the drinking water I mean by that, how much is required or how much less would be required. So there's an issue of scale here. You need to have a fairly high proportion of uptake to really impact. But what we ought to be looking at is how do we integrate that sort of thinking along with some of the dry and even some of the flush composting toilets. There is opportunity in my mind to be looking at a suite of options. So I think one way to help sell it in your community perhaps is, let's get these demonstrations, let them see what the costs and economics are of that versus some of the others, and look at all the range of issues, not just cost alone. But yeah, I agree with you. They certainly could be a really good potential.
Yes, the woman from the Barnstable Patriot asked about incentives, and I'd just like to point out that the incentives are basically built into any of these systems because you don't have to build and maintain municipal structures, and it just keeps government out of the picture, and that's a good thing, and it's demonstrated by that 100% removal figure, which is basically ridiculous and unattainable through anything that we know of now, and it fails to consider the natural attenuation, which would, you know, if you could achieve the 100% figure, the reality is you'd be getting a figure 110 plus or something, and I don't know what the rate of attenuation is, but like I said, the incentives there just keeping government, municipality out of the whole picture.
It's a good point. In some ways, the less interference, other than incentives, to get the communities to look after themselves, the better. And you talk about rather than 100% removal or keeping 100% of nitrogen out of the system, there's also the oyster and other ways of harvesting the nitrogen out of the system too, which I don't know how that is factored in or how that could be factored in. Is a good question in the sense of your TMDL. So there may be a room for error, because there's never such a thing as 100%, I would agree with you on that. So there's room for error there on how much you're not putting into the system, but there's also room to be taking out, which has to happen concurrently to restore some of these coastal environments.
Vicki Lowell. I can see the demonstrations working individually or in small groups for personal acceptance of using these alternatives, but how do you scale up what to do with the eventual end product when you could see that if everybody was using these, their market would develop, for entrepreneurs would be collecting and marketing and figuring out how to use this waste, but that's the part that's sort of like, I can't get my mind around. If you have 10 people using urine diverting toilets to start with, there won't be much incentive for anybody to start a business collecting that urine. The- Or if it's, 1,000 people, it'll be very different from 10 people. And also, we live in the coastal areas are very densely developed, so, and we're not heavy in agriculture, so are there any other things we could be doing with the urine besides agriculture?
Thanks, Vicki. And we as a subcommittee have thought about that. And initially, for the demonstration project, we would probably be putting these residuals right into the sewage treatment plant because there's so few, it wouldn't reach an economic threshold. And we have to get it out of the watershed. But as Nick said earlier, they calculated, and I don't know where it was, but you could go 60 miles to deliver that urine for fertilizer. And believe me, I'm now working in Westport. They have a lot of agriculture out there, cornfields, and that's within 60 miles. So it can be done. I'll show you guys.
Yeah, just adding to that, clearly there's an issue here. So one answer in part is that one of the reasons why we're trying to do this modelling is we can go through and for this community and the distance to various likely consumers of that fertiliser, we can start looking at what is the scale that might make this cost effective. So we can do that theoretically, and in the interim we've heard a solution and where it goes until you reach that threshold and reach where it's going to excite entrepreneurs and a new marketplace. But there are small individual farmers that call themselves organic or not that may wish to take some of these residuals. So there is still a likely marketplace even for a low amount of this material, although it would not necessarily be on a commercial basis at that scale. So I think there are stepping stones to get you there.
Let me just add one more thing. And we have a new project in Vermont where they're going to actually do this on what kind of fields are they?
They're hay fields.
Hay fields. So it's not a food crop, but they're going to experiment with that.
Hi, Hap Garrett, Falmouth. Where in the stream here do the pharmaceuticals and the endocrine disrupting type drugs get treated? Either whether Home's doing this on an individual basis or a cluster situation, or in the event that is determined to be a need, which we don't really even know if that's a need yet.
A big question. So in the traditional, if I start with the traditional type of sewage collection and treatment plants, I guess people are pretty familiar that whilst you may remove some of those compounds, and it does differ for the different chemical compositions of them, a lot will still go through a traditional sewage treatment plant and be released. So that's why there's such concern around the world, potentially. And the impact is clear on some of the receiving organisms. So in the aquatic environments, there is clear impact on certain species and types. So there is evidence there from an ecological impact point of view. And from a human health point of view, the jury is largely out, but my view on that is it seems from the weight of evidence the human impact is a very much less through that route than other routes of exposure to those sorts of chemicals. Coming back, in other words, through drinking water supply or through foods that are being used or irrigated with that material. So that's part. So then if you're asking the question, okay, we go to these closing the loop sorts of scenarios, well, the question you then ask is where are these pharmaceuticals? Are they in the black water? Are they in the yellow water? And what residuals are in the grey water? Well, yes, there are elements of those sorts of compounds in each of those streams. There's a fair majority of the pharmaceutically active compounds in the urine stream, but there will be some associated with the fecal black water side of things as well. And so the question then is, if we go into some of these, the biochar, incineration, and further treatment of those organic streams to get energy out of them, that is a further treatment barrier, which to date hasn't been quantified for a large number of these pharmaceuticals. So that's a research question that's still outstanding. Then when that goes into agriculture, we know biologically soils are much more active than aquatic ecosystems in biodegradation of these sorts of compounds. So those compounds that are, which is not all of them, but the vast majority of these are fairly readily biodegradable to some degree. So going through a treatment process, going into char, going into soil, is likely to be degrading them much, much more before they get to our food crops, and people are looking at the uptake of these compounds into foods. And again, vast majority are very weakly at all taken up, but some compounds can be taken up into plants. So then there's a question, what's coming back to us? And based on work in Germany, which is probably some of the most advanced stuff seen on some of these sorts of pharmaceutically active compounds, the concentrations coming back through that route are trivial compared, or non-existent in the sense of any therapeutic or biological effect that we're aware of today. But there's still potential for that loop. If you're an ultra-purist, there is still some potential through the soil, plant, human loop again. But what's the impact on the biota out there, the native animals and plants? Again, much less going through there than going straight into the aquatic environment. So each suite of issues needs to be thought through, and each stream, the black, the yellow and the grey water streams, will contain these, and then it comes back to in the household. Some of these products are because of the sorts of products we use in the home. First of all, don't dispose of your drugs down the toilet anymore. That's been made illegal in most parts of Europe. I don't know if it's actually illegal here or not. I suspect it's probably not, unfortunately. So, there's education on that. It's part of the control. So, whilst we might get concerned about some of these other routes, we need to look at the supply and demand side of both equations. So we should reduce the use of those drugs on the one hand, certainly reduce those going into the wastewater streams through disposal mechanisms by having returned back to companies rather than putting it into the sewer. So there ought to be incentives for that encouraged as well. So there's, again, a suite of ways of dealing with it. And then the products we use in the home are detergents with different sorts of surfactants. We need to be working with the manufacturers, which EPA is doing, with the suppliers of those sorts of detergents and surfactants that are used. There are some of these other compounds that may have endocrine disrupting or other properties of persistence in the environment. So that's part of the grey water solution as well, is in formulating better products, green chemistry if you like, for home products, so there's less ending up in the grey water stream. And with the grey water treatment, again, we'll be removing a lot more of that than with no grey water treatment.
If you want to see any of these videos that have been done about any of the workshops, they're on YouTube now, thanks to Erica Hahn. And yes, she's done great work. It's called Green First 2012, and I guess they started December 8th.
Yeah, that was that day that we were all here.
Okay, that
Yeah,
was...
and so if you want to see Dr. Ashfalt's talk when he was here December 8th, that's on YouTube. Everybody's separated all the videos, including Matt Patrick, by video. So you can pick whoever you want to listen to. You don't have to listen to 8 hours of video.
Oh, that's good. You wouldn't want to listen to 8 hours.
Green First 2012, and if you just go to YouTube, it's a channel, right? So then you go to our channel, it's all going to be just these videos
Green
about our...
First 2012.
So FIRST?
Yes,
Yes.
FIRST. And we're going to need, and if you're wondering what you can do, if you want to help, the Eco Toilet Committee, subcommittee, is putting together this demonstration project. We're going to need 62 volunteers. Okay, and not to start, but we're going to need 62 installations overall. And if you want to get involved, please let us know. You can let me know, or Wynn Monroe is the other member of the subcommittee.
In Barnstable.
No, in Falmouth.
Let's say the incentives.
And there is an incentive of $5,000 plus a zero interest loan that you would be able to get for this program.
And $300 for the...
The $300 for the pump out would be included in the $5,000, I believe, as we currently have. And there's information. There's the Phoenix toilet, there's handouts over here, and then there's Clevis also. These are the two composting toilets that are approved in Massachusetts. So that concludes our program. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope you stay involved. Thank you.